Justice Kavanaugh?
A few questions. Just to pick up on Justice Thomas's question when he asked if anything prohibits, your response, and I just want to make sure I have this clear, was nothing in the statute authorizes something like the generic limitations, correct?
That's correct.
And that, and your point about water quality standards, I want to make sure, I think with Justice Gorsuch, the water quality standards are the goal or the end, but the statutory means to that end that are authorized by the statute are the effluent limitations.
That's exactly correct.
And when you say narrative effluent limitations, I think footnote 22 of your brief talks about that, and you've mentioned it in oral argument. Can you, and Justice Sotomayor picked up on that, can you just describe briefly what you mean there?
Sure, and maybe an example would be helpful.
Yes.
In San Francisco's permit, for instance, we have a narrative water quality-based effluent limitation that requires San Francisco to increase its rate of pumping when wet weather is expected. So if there's a 30% chance of rain, we have to clear capacity in the facility so that we are able to absorb the capacity of stormwater. That's a narrative water quality-based effluent limitation. It tells us about the rate of our discharge, so it's squarely within the definition of effluent limitation, but it's simply a narrative form, and we don't object to that. It's perfectly fine to use words or numbers. We just want to know how to control our discharges and not have our compliance determined based on conditions in the receiving water.
And then the practical way this works, to pick up on Justice Alito and Justice Sotomayor's questions, let's say there are 10 different entities discharging at a particular source. If the water quality is not good in that area, EPA can go back to one or more of the 10 and tighten up the effluent limitations in the permits, which may take some time, as Justice Sotomayor points out. You have quibble with that, but in any event, that's the means for EPA to do this, right?
That's exactly correct. I mean, that tells permit holders the obligations they need to meet. Yes, that's exactly how the statute is.
And the overarching problem, I think, but you haven't gotten to this, so I'm going to give you, in terms of how this all works, is you don't know what your obligations are ahead of time, and yet you're on the hook for millions of dollars in potential prison time, even though you didn't know what your obligations were ahead of time, which strikes, at least me, I mean, as definitely a policy problem, but one that's rooted in the statute. You don't know what your obligations are, and you go to prison.
Exactly, right. I mean, it's hard to imagine.
What are you on the hook for? There's an EPA suit against you. What is the amount San Francisco is on the hook for something they didn't know they needed to do? At least that's your claim. What's the amount?
What's the amount? So the statutory penalties are $66,000 per day per violation, so that can add up quite fast.
They're seeking how much from you?
I think it's in the millions. It's over 10 years of penalties that can add up quite quickly.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Justice